The best way to appreciate the importance of pre-focusing is to see what happens when we don't do it. Regardless of whether you want to use this switch or not, it is important to know it exists and to know what it actually does. Hello everyone and welcome to Anyone Can Click. In today's episode, we're going to be learning 2 techniques that are going to help us get the correct focus fast with emphasis on fast. These techniques are pre-focusing and using the focus limiter switch. Stay on till the end where I will be sharing a personal hack which saves me valuable time on the field. On that note, without further ado, let's begin. So technique number 1 that we're going to learn is pre-focusing. To understand pre-focusing, let's revisit the messenger analogy that we had learned in episode number 30. To recap, autofocus points are like messengers that we send out in order to locate and lock focus on the subject that we want. Now, wouldn't it be beneficial to position your autofocus points around the area where you know the action is going to happen? So when the action does happen, the messengers have to cover a far shorter distance in order to find that subject, and hence the process of focusing is going to be faster. This is the essence of pre-focusing. So let's see how this works. You're looking at a weaver bird nest. With a bird inside, the bird's move is entirely predictable, so I can lock focus on that spot before anything happens. There are 2 ways to do this. First, I will use the manual focus. I'm going to switch the lens or body to manual focus. I will then turn the ring until the nest entrance looks sharp in the viewfinder. And when the bird drops, I'm simply going to press the shutter. Now the benefit of this approach is there is 0 autofocus lag, but I give up the ability to correct if the bird veers towards or away from me. The second technique is by using the autofocus continuous with back button. Now here, leave the camera in AFC or AI servo mode and set a single or a small AF point on the nest entrance. Use the back button to grab focus and then release it. Now if the bird exits exactly where expected, you simply hit the shutter button. It won't refocus, so it's as fast as the manual approach. But if the bird surprises you, let's say it drops lower or exits through a different entrance, hold the back button again and the autofocus continuous will pick up the movement. A bonus tip is use a slightly narrower aperture. That will give you the safety margin if your pre-focus is off by a few centimeters. If you think it's not worth the effort, let me show you another video. Best way to appreciate the importance of pre-focusing is to see what happens when we don't do it. Now here, you can see 2 bee-eaters preening on a perch. And if you observe them even for a few minutes, you will notice that they keep returning to the same perch. So the most logical thing in this case would have been to focus on the perch. Wait for them to return before I clicked the shutter button. And yet, in 2019, I did not know any better. And this is what happened instead. I lost the shot. If you're enjoying the content of this video, do not forget to hit the like button, definitely leave your comments below and subscribe if you haven't already. Now coming to technique number 2, which is using the focus limiter switch. Now, if you have a telephoto lens, look closely at the barrel of the lens and you will notice this tiny switch. This is the focus limiter switch and is going to tell your camera to look for focus only for a particular range of distance rather than sweeping the entire scene in front of it in order to find the subject. This makes the process faster and it makes the process more accurate. This switch usually has 2 options. Now for example, let's look at my lens, which is the Tamron 7200 f2.8. Has these 2 options. Full, which means that it's going to look for focus from the minimum focusing distance, which for this lens is 0.95 meters, all the way to infinity. And the second option is infinity to 3 meters, which means that it is only going to focus on subjects that are located beyond 3 meters. So if I'm photographing birds at a distance, I'm going to most certainly flip this switch on. This way, the camera is not only going to save time, but it is also going to avoid distractions like grass and other foreground clutter which may come in the way of getting me my focus. Another very specific use case that I have of this is when I'm shooting subjects through some foreground clutter, like in this case. Now, a quick tip here. It is difficult to visualize what these distances actually mean. 0.95 meters, 3 meters. So this is what I do. You use the focus ring and focus at the distance set by your limiter switch. In my case, 3 meters. I look through the viewfinder to see what becomes sharp. This gives me a rough idea of the distance so I can decide whether or not I want to use that switch. But remember, if your subject starts moving outside this range, then your camera is not going to focus on it. So use the switch with caution. And when in doubt, always use the full setting instead. In fact, sometimes we accidentally, without our knowledge, turn the switch on and then we wonder why the camera is not locking focus. Which is why, regardless of whether you want to use the switch or not, it is important to know it exists and to know what it actually does. With that, we have reached the end of today's video, but as promised, I'm going to quickly share my personal hack for Nikon cameras, which is adaptable to other camera brands. This saves me valuable time in a fast-paced situation. I predominantly shoot in the AFC mode. Here, the autofocus area mode becomes crucial. Typically, I will switch between two modes. I will either use the AFC single mode. This is for static or predictable subjects because this is accurate. For every other situation, I will use the AFC dynamic mode and usually the 9-point dynamic because this mode is highly reliable. I have disabled every other area mode for faster switching. Additionally, I've customized my PV button as a shortcut to instantly switch between the modes whenever the action happens all of a sudden. For instance, when I'm photographing a stationary bird on a perch, I typically shoot in the AFC single mode for precise focus. But the moment the bird takes off, I quickly press the conveniently placed PV button to instantly switch my autofocus area mode to D9, ensuring reliable tracking as the bird moves. Before I wrap up, I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Every camera has its unique strengths, be it eye detection, face detection, 3D tracking. So evaluate your camera's autofocus strengths and utilize them for optimal performance. Personally use Nikon cameras the most, and if you'd like a detailed walkthrough on the autofocus settings, let me know in the comments below. I will see you next week with another very important topic, which is white balance. Until then, take care. Bye.